Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Think about stories. I mean, stories are really powerful. We love to go to movies. There's stories. They're all kind of within 2 hours, or we binge watch shows. There's stories, and some continue on, and some have an end to them. And stories have been with us forever. If you stop and think about it, we had stories before we had language. You go look at caves, and there are pictures, and those are. Contrary to popular belief, those are not people drawing nude selfies of themselves. They're actually people telling stories. And we don't know. We can speculate, but they're stories. So today I'm really excited because I have Kristen Spencer on here with me, and she is a best-selling author and business writing expert, and she has always been obsessed with storytelling. And she uses her passion for story combined with the proven science behind sales psychology to help her clients connect with people they love working with. And it all revolves around stories. I didn't mean to make you laugh. I always think about cave drawings. It's like there's this caveman saying to another, "Oh my God, you drew a nude picture of yourself. Don't you know this will be around forever?" Kind of like we tell people now, don't do the wrong thing on social media.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know if I shouldn't have laughed, but you got me.
No, that's fine. That's fine. You're here. Hey, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Frank, for having me. I'm so excited to be on your show.
Well, here's how we're going to start. Tell me a story. Tell me Kristen's story.
Okay, I will give you the short version because this is a shorter show, right?
However you want to go. Yeah, just kick. I mean, whatever. Go for it.
We'll pretend. Okay, we'll pretend we're in a networking meeting, because if we're in a networking meeting, that means I've got between 2 and 5 minutes to make you want to talk to me more, right? So I'm going to tell you my business story because I won't cry telling you this one.
Okay. All right.
So I had to completely pivot my business during COVID, like so many other business owners. And I know we're tired of talking about COVID, but without it, my story doesn't make any sense, because I was working in the fiction world as a certified copy editor and a developmental editor. I've written a bunch of fiction books as well. And I realized that when the pandemic happened, no one wanted to pay for my services anymore. And at the same time, my husband could not work. He was not an essential worker. He was a house painter at that time, and he couldn't go into people's houses. And even after the lockdowns ended, people didn't want him in their house. And you can understand why, right? Like, we understood.
Yeah.
But we had done this thing, which seemed really smart before COVID hit, which we bought and renovated a student rental for housing with all of the money we had saved and inherited. We used everything up in this one project because we knew it would cash flow immediately. And the numbers were great. The profits were amazing. And then it sat vacant for 18 months because of school closures. So my husband's not working. I am not getting new clients. And I realized at some point, that we were not going to be able to heat our house anymore unless something dramatic happened, because we had food stamps, right? The government stepped in for people who were non-essential workers, and we were able to buy groceries, but there wasn't any program yet for property owners or homeowners to supplement the gas prices. And I'm a Southern California girl, Frank, you know that about me.
Yeah.
And so when I moved to the East Coast, I learned very quickly that if you don't pay your heating bill, what happens?
You turn it off.
Your pipes freeze and explode in your house.
That too. Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Right? So because in Southern California, that would never, ever happen. That would just not happen. So we have this rental property and we have to heat it because otherwise the pipes are going to explode, and we need to heat our house or otherwise the pipes are going to explode and we're going to become human popsicles along with our kids, right? And I just felt so desperate for money. I have never felt that desperate for money in my life, even though at some point, like, my family couldn't afford to buy food because of a situation we were in, but I felt much more desperate. Like, it's winter. We had one of the roughest winters during that winter. And I was like, I have to do something. Like, my husband can't do what he's supposed to do. No one's hiring me for this fiction writing. So I remembered that I had been talking with one of my friends on her podcast, Christina Adams. And she was like, oh, Kristen, I make all my money doing copywriting. She's like, the fiction is for fun and anything I make, awesome. But I make all my money doing marketing. And I was like, okay, you know what? Christina's a very talented writer, but I felt like I can do it. If she can do it, I can do it.
Sure.
So I made an Upwork profile. I did a crash course in copywriting, and I was able to pay all the heating bills that month because I was just so desperate. And that's when I realized, though, that all my training in storytelling, in fiction formulas, and copy editing could make my copy as a business professional stand out above everyone else's. And I went around trying to find someone who could help me to connect the two things. And everyone kept telling me, you absolutely cannot do that. They're completely unrelated. And I was like, I don't think they're unrelated. And I finally found a mentor, my mentor right now, Krista Nichols. And she was like, I see what you're trying to do, and I think it's going to be amazing. I'll help you any way I can.
Yeah.
And fast forward, now I get emails from my clients that are like 3 times ROI is the subject, because I was so desperate that I had to take all the skills I already had and turn them into money. And now that's what I do every day.
That was 5 minutes, and that was powerful. I mean, no, I think it's good. It's, well, you're a literary person. What's that called? A hero's journey? Right.
Except you have to adapt it for yourself, right?
Yeah. Well, but I just think I mean, there were a lot of people, there still are a lot of people who are just kind of hanging out and feeling sorry for themselves. I deal with it in the business world, people making excuses all the time. It's like, well, things are down, but there was COVID. And it's like, yeah. But there are people who did well.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. It just, it's a lot about resiliency, but also when my business took off, you know what my husband did instead of sitting around? He went back to school to become a truck driver.
Okay.
Because there's a nationwide shortage, and now he works and he's getting paid really well. So it was a desperate situation for us, but we were able to use that time to refocus and to learn what we really should be doing professionally.
Yeah, no, that's a great story. I mean, stories are powerful, as I led in with. And I think from a relationship and a networking perspective, I think they're powerful. Somebody comes to me and says, well, I'm a realtor or I'm a copywriter. It doesn't have the same pizzazz as that whole story you just told me. Right.
Right. Yeah.
I'm listening to you, and it's like, if you just said, hey, I'm a copywriter, it's like, okay, so, right?
Yeah, most people don't even know what that means either. They're like, what is that? Like, and a lot of times people will, like, if I just said, Frank, I'm a copywriter, and you don't know anything about it, do you know what people always respond with?
No.
They'll be like, oh, that legal thing that keeps other people from stealing your stuff. And I'm like,
yes.
That is... It's spelled differently. That's the only difference.
Yeah.
It's confusing.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about stories. I mean, stories are important to, us connecting with people. You were in the fiction world, but you're kind of bringing that over into the business world. Like you say, the things are the same. There's still, this kind of this buildup. What do you see as the elements of a good story, whether it's a 30-second story or a 300-page story?
Okay, we're talking specifically about business, because I know you and I could geek out on fiction writing because we're both fiction writers.
Yeah, well, business. but I mean, yeah, I've written fiction, and people say, well, why write fiction? What's the connection between fiction? And I always tell people, I write about relationships. Yes. I write networking's about relationships, and my books are about relationships. And so there's an interplay there. I'm not able to dissect it like you are, right? I wrote a book, and in fact, I was talking to somebody the other day. I described one of my books, and well, maybe it was you. You said, "Well, it's a such and such kind of a book," and it's like, "Oh, okay. Well, if you say so, it is."
That was me.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds better than what I could do. So, but it just seems to me there's elements to what draws us in.
Yeah, definitely. I will say, like, I just want to give a really clear warning to everyone who's listening that there's a weird dynamic where you can borrow formulas from fiction writing and implement them in nonfiction, which would be your business story, right? That's nonfiction. But you cannot do the opposite. So you cannot take a fiction story and supplement it in as your business story to teach someone something, like giving them an abstract example. You will lose them every time, and the brain science backs me up 100%.
Can you give an example of that? Because I use a lot of metaphors in trying to explain things to people. And maybe I'm thinking differently than what you're thinking. So go ahead, please.
So I would say using a short metaphor now and then is fine, but I'm going to tell you a story, actually.
Okay, please.
So my husband and I were driving, and this was before we bought the student rental, and we were listening to a book about how to buy and renovate a building to rent. And the book had great information in it. We were riveted. We're like, yes, we're down. This is what we want to learn about. This is what we want to do with this inheritance and our savings so that we can grow what we have for our kids. That's the whole idea with real estate, right? It's a generational investment. So we're listening, and all of a sudden the story, like, he goes from telling about his own experiences and the lessons he learned to telling an abstract story about a fisherman who's trying to build his business to pass down to his son. And this weird hush came over the car. My husband and I are both quiet. And I'm counting at, like, something has gone wrong because I'm counting. If I'm counting, that's not good. So we're at 10 minutes. We're at 20 minutes. It's an audiobook. We're at 30 minutes. We reach 40 minutes of this fisherman's story, and we are both so enraged and infuriated that we miss the speed limit change sign, and my husband gets pulled over, and you better believe that was the most expensive audiobook we ever read.
I got you. So you're probably listening to it thinking, okay, what's the point?
What's the point? And it was confusing too. Like, you could tell he was trying to sound smart by inventing a fiction story. And when I first started working as a copywriter, people would come to me and they would say, oh, write me a fiction story to illustrate this example. And I would say, listen, I will do whatever you want. Now I tell clients no, because that's where I'm at in my business. I'll be like, no, that's not what you want. But I told them it's not going to work. And they're like, what do you mean it's not going to work? I'm like, you need to use your own story to create that point of human connection, or no one's going to remember you. Or if they do, they're going to remember you like I remember that audiobook, and I'm mad about it. And I would never buy anything else from that guy.
What would you say about books like Who Moved My Cheese and things like that? They're kind of parable books. And people rave about those, The Go-Giver. But I guess The Go-Giver is more, I don't know if you've read it, but it's talking about people. It's talking about people. So, but there are some out there. Go ahead.
I'm going to point to Jesus, the OG parable teller. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't like the Bible, that's okay. Just think of it as a book in this moment. But what did Jesus tell his disciples when they were confused by the parables?
You know what? I'm like a B- Catholic, so I'm going to have to say what? Please.
He told them, I'm telling the stories this way because I don't want everyone to understand. And that's what you'll do. I mean, that's what we do as business experts, right? Like, we'll use jargon, and then no one who's outside of our industry can understand us, even though we're trying to sell or connect with people who are outside of our industry. And I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying if you're trying to grow your business, that's not the time for parables. If you're trying to network, don't use a parable. Just be yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, obviously somebody writing a book is writing a book, and they're going to have some sort of summary or explanation. They do generally do. but you're at a networking event, and people are asking questions, or you have an opportunity, to sharing stories there need to be relevant, and they need to be your stories.
Right.
Are there elements to stories?
So what I want our business owner friends who are listening to do right now is to learn a few new words, and I'm going to break it down for them.
Please.
Okay.
Brighten.
So speaker, listener, neural coupling.
Speaker, listener, neural coupling. Okay.
And all that is, so, okay, let me ask you, Frank, did you ever play one of those like Simon games where it's like a pattern of lights and then you have to hit the next pattern to keep going in the game? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. I can't say I was ever good at them, and so they didn't hold my attention for that reason, but I have, and I've seen them. Yes.
So the great news for you is you don't have to be good for this to work. You don't have to do anything other than listen to what I'm saying right now.
Okay.
So speaker listener neural coupling happens automatically when you tell a personal story. And scientists studied the brain, and they realized that the speaker, they studied the pattern in their brain, and then they studied the brain of the listener, and the same exact areas lit up on a delay, which means that you can automatically, without the other person even thinking about it, take someone through a pattern that helps them know, like, and trust you as you're telling the story.
Oh.
It happens automatically. And that's why I could geek out over brain science, but I won't. But it's like that light game where you push the buttons and then your listener, even without knowing, pushes those exact same buttons. So if you're choosing the right story, and I will say every story needs a beginning, a middle, and an end. If you don't have an end to your story, everyone's going to be mad when you finish telling it.
Yeah.
But so you want to create the pattern, and this is what I do, right? And this is what I did. I'm going to be meta for a minute. When I told you my story of my ultimate failure of feeling bad that we couldn't heat our house and my kids were cold, and I was desperate for money and my husband couldn't work, I took you on a journey with me emotionally where I was failing. I pivoted and figured out a way to fix it. And I made other business owners succeed through taking them through that same pattern. So the listener, whoever's listening to this right now, you have been on a journey with me. And at the end of that pattern, I proved to you that if you need help with storytelling to grow your business, that I can help you because I figured it out for my own business and made it grow.
Well, and what I like about that story is there's some vulnerability to it.
Yes.
I talk to people and their story is riches to more riches. And to me, that's not compelling at all.
No.
And I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to send the message that I'm uber successful and anything I touch is uber successful. So you want to work with me for that reason. And maybe it's just how I'm wired, but I'm more apt to resonate or be attracted to someone like you who's felt the pain. Right.
And you're right. No, it's not you. It's not just you. It's everyone. And I always I have this program where I do the 3 stories you need in any business interaction to help someone understand why you're the one they should hire. And the second story is all about failure. And business owners get so mad at me and they will resist and they'll be like, no, I don't want to do this. I do not want to talk about my failure. And I'm like, but you realize the people who need your help, they're in pain right now because they are failing.
Yeah.
And they want someone who can get through that, not someone who's going to tell them, well, you should be more like me and never fail.
Well, in my business, we have probably, 120 different chapters out there. I tell people there've been over 200, meaning I have failed and I've learned a lot through my failures. And that's what, we learn so much more from our failures than we do our successes.
We do. Success teaches us nothing, in my opinion. I haven't learned anything from success.
Well, I think we learn less from success because, and there's a great book out there called Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. She's a professional poker player.
Oh,
And she
nice.
talks about, and I mean, she's super smart. We think of poker players as, these dim-witted people who are in a smoke-filled room and, relying on luck.
No,
And they're
they're
all
so
really, really
smart.
intelligent. Yeah. And they hyper analyze both their losses and their wins. And what she coaches through the book is don't look at a win and think you're smart. Look at a win and say, okay, where, I was lucky, there's a luck in here. Where were the mistakes I can kind of fix? And don't look at your failures as, oh, it was all just dumb luck. It was beyond my control. Look at your failures as an opportunity to really dissect dissect things.
Yes.
And that's, I think, where failure comes in handy. And I don't know if I shared this with you when I originally when we originally met, but there was somebody that I was introduced to, and they started out, and it was, I haven't found my first client yet. That was just more or less what they had said. And
Okay.
I told him, I said, listen, I wouldn't ever say that. I wouldn't say it like that. Because he's like the plumber that's left a big company's out on his own. It's not like you've never unclogged a
Right.
toilet before, so
Exactly.
you don't have to put it in that terms. But I really wanted to help him in that moment, right? Where somebody came to me and said, "Oh yeah, I was to quit my job the other day. I'm making 7 figures now." My response to that person is, "Well, you don't need me then," because
That's true. Well, and like that's really difficult to relate to, right? And
yeah,
as a copywriter, so the storytelling part of my brain is different than the copywriting part of my brain. And the copywriting part reminds me, and my mentor says this all the time, whoever mirrors the pain best wins. If there's no pain, how are they going to connect with you?
yeah, that's right. No, it's a great point. Let's shift gears here. The
Okay.
time has flown by. I want you to talk about your business. I want you to tell the audience what you do, who you're looking for, if who listening out there might benefit from you.
So anyone who wants to learn to tell better stories, I do have like this one program where I spend 30 minutes with you and I help you. I use questions. That's a huge part of my job, right? I use questions to draw the story out and then I write it for you. And the interesting thing about me that I didn't even realize until 2 years ago is that I have a unique talent for being able to write in anyone else's voice. My husband theorizes that it's because I spent 15 years finding my own voice first. I feel like that's probably a good theory.
Right.
But so if you need messaging, if you need email sequences, if you need to understand how to present your business in a consistent way using the sales psychology that will convert people, but also using your amazing story to engage with the people who need the hope that you bring, that's where I shine. That's where I come in. I'll write your website. I'll write your email sequences. I can write your LinkedIn posts, any kind of writing, basically, all the way up to if you are someone who has a high ticket offer, let's say like around, you need it basically to start at $10,000 because I make sure whoever works with me on books can get paid back fast.
Right.
That's my goal. So if they have a high ticket offer, I know I can get them their money back fast, but I will write a whole book for you in your voice that you can use to establish yourself as the expert in your area. And you can actually also repurpose everything in the book for, I would say, like 3 years of content. You can create a course out of it.
Right.
And I have all my methods that I've built over the years. And when I write books for business owners, no one knows that I wrote it unless they want to put my name on it. But also they get reviews that say things like, this is a unicorn of a book in our industry, because I'm combining so many things, which people told me you cannot do that. And that I would say, don't listen when people tell you that.
Good. It's good. How can people get a hold of you? Literary Symmetry. Is that okay?
Yeah, literarysymmetry.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Kristen N. Spencer, or literally any other platform. I'm on everything.
Okay. Last question. What's the end of your story look like? What's the fairy tale ending that you're driving for? Or is it to be determined?
I would love to be able to travel more with my kids before they move out. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Oh.
And then, if someday one of them wants to make me a grandmother, I wouldn't be upset.
Okay. That's awesome. It'll all happen for you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Frank. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.